how to do that. I
Sounds
don't
good.
know. And that sounds incredible to me.
It's pretty incredible because then it filters when you have clients versus other stuff in your inbox. Anyway.
Done.
All right. Well, that concludes the pre-show. I hope you enjoyed your
Brad and I could go on for hours and hours about pens and colors and hair and everything.
We so could. My daughter and I say that all the time that we need a dash cam with like a YouTube channel because we just laugh at ourselves all the time. And my daughter says Heather's her best friend, so we could all be on together sometime.
We should. Let's do it. Plan it.
All right. Thank you for the round of applause, Carla. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So Carla's messaging in the chat and a little bit of just logistics before we get started, some housekeeping. The chat should be available to everyone. And when you are posting, you can change the little blue icon to say everyone or just hosts and panelists if you want to shoot a message just to us. And the Q&A is open too. So throughout our webinar today, if there's any questions that you have that you want to throw into the Q&A, we will definitely save some time at the end so that we can answer any questions that you have. But Heather's our guest host today. Kirk is lucky enough to be joining his family to celebrate his daughter. His daughter plays for the University of North Carolina for their volleyball team. She's a setter there, and they have made it to the first round of tournament. So they're going to be playing Yale, and it was a last minute. They didn't know, right, that they qualified. So he was going to be on with us today, and in true walk the talk fashion with ACT, we believe in better practice, better life. So he is enjoying his life with his family, celebrating his daughter, and let's hope that UNC wins, right? Like go Tar Heels. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open up our presentation for today. Before we start, actual content and educational component itself, I just want to share a few things about ACT if you are new to us and you aren't aware. We do have our To the Top Study Club once a quarter. And every time we have a webinar, we like to share with you a golden ticket. If you are a dentist and you would like to join us for our To the Top Study Club, once a quarter we get together. We have 2 sessions, 3 soon. And we sit in a room together and we learn from each other and we talk about being aligned and we talk about being smart and we talk about being healthy and strategic planning. And it's a great opportunity to not only learn new and inventive ways to practice, but to connect with other people in our community. And I think we all agree that that's our favorite part is the relationships that we get to form and at the end of the day, when everyone gives a takeaway and they say that they learned something from someone else in the room, that brings us a lot of joy. So if you are interested in joining us in Milwaukee in our Learning Center for the To the Top Study Club, you can come for free. Use the golden ticket, reach out to our team and let us know that you're interested. And we'll be happy to have you in the room and you can learn a little bit more about what that study club is all about. We like to share with you what our general purpose is here with ACT. And what we say is we want for you to have a better practice and a better life. And we have a few ways to help you do that. We have our Best Practices Association, which is an online community platform where you can jump in and see our recordings, webinars like this, clinical masterclasses, resources, tools. We're starting to develop learning modules and courses within the BPA. And so you can really do everything ACT on your own. And if you want to, you can move into group time with our ACT resources. So our Do It in a Group is the To the Top Study Club that I just mentioned to you. If you're in the BPA and you're doing it on your own and you think, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could talk to other people about how this is working out for them? Join us in the study club and you can do it as a group. And then if you really want to step it up, you can have a coach like Heather or myself, because we're both coaches with the ACT community and our one-on-one pro coaching community. We have the BPA app available as well now, too. So if you want to join the BPA, this is a QR code. The Best Practices Association is an awesome place for you to be able to go find a positive, encouraging atmosphere where there's resources at your disposal to help you have a better practice and a better life. Heather and I were just in there today. I saw I was making some comments and answering some folks, and Heather was in there liking some things. So it's a great place for us to hop in every day and just see what our like-minded friends are up to. So feel free to scan that code. We'll show it again at the end if you're interested. We hope to see you there.
We do. Miranda, I just want to piggyback on that really quickly. We are surrounded by so much negativity on social media. This is a very clear, separate platform on purpose from all of the negativity and the clouds and stuff in the world. One of my favorite songs right now is Good Vibes. I can't remember who sings it, but it's like good vibes only, don't bring your cloud. Like, I don't need the cloud. We do have issues and problems and struggles, And what's so great about the BPA is that the comments and the feeling of the community is a very positive, encouraging, uplifting one. And that's what we need as humans, not the cloud.
Oh, you're so right. Sometimes it's hard to even go in some of the platforms out there in the world unless you're just looking to be entertained. But if you really want to learn something in a positive environment, that's what we're trying to create. So I'm so glad you pointed that out. Awesome. You ready to get started?
I'm ready. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. So it's Thursday, December 5th, and we are talking about crystal clear success and how crafting a vision creates success. And we're really excited to be talking to you guys about this today. This is really stemmed from our time at our To the Top session in quarter 4. What we talked about was strategic planning. And what we know about a vision is that it provides a destination. And what we know about a strategic vision is that it also provides guidance for us on how to get there. We talk about vision a lot, and vision is really, really important. And what we're going to be digging in a little deeper to today is a slightly lower elevation of vision, which is strategic vision. So, how do we dream big with a vision and then also put some thought and vision to how we might start making that happen? What's some action thoughts that we can put into that as well? And so when we're looking at that, that clear vision really helps for us to stay more motivated, even when we're facing obstacles, because we have this strong sense of where we're going and what's pushing us to pursue our goals. We have a direction helping us prioritize tasks, make decisions, avoid getting sidetracked. This is a big one. And I have an example I'm going to share in just a minute from a team who didn't have a vision set up for a while. And once we got one in place, really started to see things come together in terms of staying really laser focused and on track. Helps you to build resilience because it is a source of inspiration. The team needs to be inspired. Kirk talks all the time. If he was here, he'd want me to say everybody wants to be a part of meaningful work. And when we have a clear vision in front of us, it makes it so much more impactful as a team member to know that we're doing something that matters and that we have a purpose and we know where we're going. It helps us to bounce back from setbacks and stay super committed to our journey ahead. So before I jump into this next phase of it, I want to share this story. So it's funny how things come up like this. Whenever there's a webinar or podcast coming up, there's always something that comes into play in my coaching world that's like, oh, that's exactly what we're talking about. I was talking with a client just last week, and they were talking about how much has changed in their coaching journey. And so early on, they're in now their 3rd year of coaching. And so that first year, feeling a little bit lost. Why did you even start coaching? Well, it was just being overwhelmed with everyday life in the practice. They were about 8 years in as a dentist at the time, a dental practice owner. And in the beginning, you're filled with a little bit of that honeymoon phase, just adrenaline energy of starting something new, and it's exciting. And there's so many things that you have to figure out that you're usually not even really looking at 3, 5, 10 years down the road. You're just trying to get situated right now. And what we were talking about was, man, wouldn't it have been nice if I had realized how important the vision setting was back then and the strategic vision setting, because that first 2, 3 years would have felt a lot different. So here I am now, I'm 8 years in, well, 10 years now, because they're going again, they've been in coaching for a little while as a dental practice owner. And it's like, aha, like the light has come through the clouds, and it's this awareness of like, how did I ever go into a new year without having a plan in front of me? Because then you just end up dealing with the day to day, the problem solving, the putting out of the fires, and questions come to you and you don't know how to answer them. You start to feel a little bit stuck. I've even worked with clients who are mothers or parents, and when their kids are little, they're not really worried about the vision of the practice. They're just trying to survive in this like work life balance. And then the kids get a little older and they're like, what do I want to do with my business and with my practice? My kids don't, need me as much. I don't feel as burdened by that. And so I want to be able to free myself up into my practice. So it's just a really great opportunity to set a laser focus. I don't think there's a right or a wrong time to do it. If you're just starting out, like do it now. But Chris, who works with us as our director of coaching and director of operations, she has a phrase and she says, when was the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday, but the next best time is today. So why wait? And we want to help you understand a little bit more about how all of this works and how it can be impactful in your practice. Heather, any thoughts from you, from clients, or your own experience around vision in the office?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, we talk so much about burnout in this industry, and part of that is that we're just in this hamster wheel. Like you said, we're just stuck. We're winging it. We're just showing up, and it's a job and not a fulfilling career. Part of what makes it a fulfilling career and to have your team members and yourself be part of something bigger than who you are is contributing to and feeling like we're contributing to a future plan, a future goal. What is it exactly that we're trying to achieve together? Sure, we're taking care of our patients, but if we're literally just doing the exact same thing every single day, then we're not going to get where we really deep down want to go.
Yeah, our book from last quarter was What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's that same mindset of unless we're going to do something different, we're going to end up with the same result over and over and over again. And if in your heart of hearts, there's something more, there's just that little tug that's like, there's just something more, it's really just about stopping and taking the time to figure it out. And so I love this diagram because it helps for us to really see that, great practices have strategic plans. And that is what we just worked on in the last quarter. We encourage everyone around October of every year to start strategically planning for the next year so you can get everything in place so that on January 1, you're rolling. And what most of us do is jump right into that strategic plan and a little bit more of the short-term lower elevation. And what this diagram I think really helps us to see is before we get to plan, we have to think. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit today about strategic vision and really thinking about what you want for your practice 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that you can tailor it back, bring that elevation back down, and actually start planning for the year ahead. But if we don't think first and think big, we're not going to gain as much traction. So we're going to focus today on the think aspects of all of this. And we'll dig in a tiny little bit at the very end into the actual planning and show some examples of some clients who've worked through this themselves and then developed some annual outcomes and goals through the process. So, we're going to be primarily talking about our strategic vision creator tool. So, this is a new tool that we have in our toolbox, and it's a forward facing guide that outlines the direction of your practice. It helps set strategic strategies to keep your vision very specific. We have 4 specific areas that we're going to talk about when we're talking about strategic vision. And it keeps us really grounded in reality. It's this balance of we have to dream big, and then we also have to look at what can we accomplish and start to plan out when and where those things are going to come into play. So we have 4 key areas for strategic vision that we're going to focus on today. So when we're looking at these 4 areas, we are going to be visioning around the clinical aspects of our practice, the financial aspects of our practice, team culture, and the concept of better practice, better life. Now, I don't know about you, Heather, but as a coach, a lot of my clients lean into financial planning. When we start talking about strategic planning, we start going right into 10% more. I want to make sure I'm, making this much. I want to be able to give my team bonuses next year. Like there's a lot of financial conversation or clinical. I would say that's the other big one for me is what technology might they want to bring in. I want to start looking at sleep or comprehensive oral systemic. And that's great because those are important things to think about. But we really want to have a really well rounded vision that encompasses all key parts of the practice. Any
And the
thoughts?
reason we want that well-rounded vision is because all 4 of these are going to relate to one another. They are all interconnected. You can't talk about that financial. Just had a conversation with a client just yesterday that they want to take their write-offs down by 2.5% next year. So I asked them, okay, how are you going to do that? And they were completely stumped. And that's because the clinical team culture, better practice, better life piece wasn't also included in that. So the clinical piece, what is it exactly that you're going to offer to your patients in your practice in the coming year that's going to help offset that? What is it that we're going to do with our team culture that's also going to offset that? Because we're going to have patients that are going to say yes to more treatment when we also focus on those 2 things. So that's why it's really key to follow all 4 keys, because they are all interrelated and they will impact one another.
Yeah. And to make the most progress, you really do have to look at a little bit of everything. So we're going to take you through some of the thought processes in this tool. So the tool itself, again, it's a guided brainstorming exercise, and you'll be able to have access to this if you are a part of this webinar. It's also in our BPA as a resource. It's really hard to get it wrong because this is just kind of brainstorm, daydreaming. It's thinking big. It's a little sloppy. It's a little messy. You don't have to get clean around this type of thinking until we're down into the nitty gritty annual, quarterly, weekly planning process. When we're way up high in this big vision, you can be as messy as you want with it. Try not to have any self limiting beliefs. Try not to think about the things that are happening in your team right now that would never allow for me to do that. Or there's no way that my facility is going to allow for me to be able to do that. Because if you look at the top of this page, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you can go as big as you want with this and then work yourself backwards to get where you want to go. So when we're looking at this tool, you'll see in every segment that is part of the brainstorming tool, you have the vision side, which is where you're really dreaming big. You're going to ask yourself these questions. We're going to go through these questions together. And then you're going to have that strategic vision side, which is a little bit more of the how. It's not the big conceptual vision. It's a little bit more of, it's not a vision if you're not willing to act on it. So, what can we do different? What might we have to start doing? What might we have to stop doing? And so, we're going to talk you through some of these questions today that are in this tool and help you to understand how you can navigate through this to help get a solid vision in place. All right, the first key segment is around clinical vision. And so in our clinical vision side, right, we're dreaming big. Remember, we're thinking about the big dream, not the how just yet. Just what is your overall vision of health? This is an interesting question to ask our clients. And we won't go super deep into all of these, but this is one of my favorite ones because we all assume that everyone's vision or philosophy around this is the same. And it's really not. It's not for our patients, and it's also not for our dentists. There's a lot of variation that we see from people around what their vision is of oral health. Any thoughts, Heather? I see you nodding along.
No, none of our clients are the exact same.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about this is you're customizing it for you. Like when you're working through this tool, you're customizing it for what you want for your practice. Comparison is the thief of joy. You never want to be like the guy down the street just because they're doing it. It doesn't mean you need to do it, right? So, what is your goal for every patient who sits in your chair? I actually worked through a vision as a hygienist. I worked through a vision exercise similar to this with a coach, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago. It was a really long time ago. And it ended up being, you guys writing, it ended up being 8 pages by the time we got done because she just kept challenging me to get more and more specific and more real around what I wanted. And this question was part of that, something very similar to this, which literally, like, what does it feel like to walk into your operatory? What does it smell like? What do people see? What do they feel? What is the experience? What type of technology might you incorporate? What type of communication strategy? You can get really, really big and broad when you're thinking about these questions. So, what is your goal for every patient who sits in your chair? It can be as simple as I want every single patient to feel like they're at home. I want every experience to be an experience like I would want to have as a patient. Or you can get really super specific, all the way down to all 5 senses. How do you want your patients to feel about that experience? We all know that patients choose their provider and choose buying decisions through how they feel. That's that Maya Angelou quote of people remember how you make them feel, not what you say, or something to that. I'm not giving her enough credit, but that's true. And so, what do you want the experience for your patients to be like? What do you want your patients to say about your dentistry? I think this is a really big one because we think our patients appreciate the technical aspect of our dentistry, and they do, but they don't know it. They don't know that it feels good and it's not sensitive, and they never hurt me when I'm getting anesthesia because they don't know why, but because they don't understand the technical aspects of it, that the margin is closed and that you do a really great job with applying a desensitizing agent before you're doing your final buildup, or you have special technique or anesthesia or a compounded topical that you use prior to delivering the injection. Like they don't know those things. You can start to think about those things, but the end goal is what do we want them to say to their friends and family when they're out? Because most people are going to choose a practice that they like the dentist. They're so awesome. They're so fun. They're so friendly. I feel like family there. And guess what? It's comfortable. I can't remember the last time I was like in pain at the dentist. People are going to choose you for that experience that they're having. What do you want other dentists to say about your dentistry? This is a big one too. Think about the last time that you were sent a set of radiographs with a new patient, right? And we all do it every single practice. We get that new set of radiographs and we immediately place a little bit of judgment on whatever's happening on the other side of those films. And what do you want other dentists saying about your dentistry? What do you want as your reputation within the professional community? And then later we'll start thinking strategically about what do we need to do one way or another to really be. Do you want to be the TMJ guy in your area or the TMJ gal? Okay, what do we need to do to make that happen? So now we shift into that side around the strategic vision. So not just dreaming big, but a little bit more of the how. So are you going to provide the same procedures that you've done in the past, or are they different? Are there any technological changes to your practice? How are they going to increase efficiency and or profitability? This is, I would really even probably break that question up into two questions because you can get really deep into the efficiency side, even separately from profitability. And then you have to balance that out. How's the pace of your workday going to differ from today? Or is it the same? If you want to do more comprehensive dentistry or sleep dentistry or building an oral systemic health, you might need more time in your schedule than you have now. If you're currently more of a single tooth practice who participates in a lot of PPOs and you're having to see more quantity of patients to make up the difference in your adjustments, it's going to be hard for you to build a comprehensive concierge style practice because you need more time. And so you have to start looking at that bigger vision, that bigger dream to say, what would I need to actually do? How would I need to act differently? What aspects of your clinical practice will differentiate you from your competition? Heather, I would love if you would chime in just a little bit on differentiation because you actually did a podcast on differentiation not too long ago. It was excellent. So tell us a little bit, everyone who's watching and listening, what differentiation is and why it's important to differentiate your practice from your competition.
We'll define a little bit because I could talk about this all day, but what aspects of your clinical practice will differentiate you from your competition? This is that like, how am I different from the dentist down the street? Even if your dentistry may be similar, what is it that's going to make people want to come see you over them? And I love the questions before is like, how is it that you make your patient feel? What is the experience that they're getting there? But it's going to differ from practice to practice. So going into that differentiation model is you understanding like who your avatar patient is, the very best patient in your chair at the right time, doing the right procedure, right patient, right team, right core values, right everything to have that differentiation in place. I don't know. I mean, I could go on all day,
Yeah,
Miranda, but
you
really just
did
like
good.
this
You're
is
like, how do
you
I
saying
make this in a tiny little nugget? You
this is
did
my
such
flag in the ground with like, this is how I'm different from all the other dentists that my patients could choose to see within like a 20-mile radius.
And I think you made a good point right at the beginning of that, which a lot of it is around the experiences that you're creating. We talk a lot about differentiation not being like that you have a CIRAC, or it's not as much about your dentistry as it is what is unique to you and what you're providing for the patients. And the experience usually does come into play with that. So that was awesome. I often tell the story of my husband is a real estate agent, and you might take someone out shopping for houses and there's, four houses for sale in the same neighborhood. They're all in the same school district. They all have a generally the same square footage. They're around the same price point. But there's that one house that smelled like fresh baked cookies when you walked in. And they have a yellow front door and they had a walk-in closet. And at the end of the day, when you're sitting down and everything to the consumer, to the buyer who's looking was it felt the same for the most part. All those main points, the boxes all checked. But there was that one house and it smelled so good and it had that yellow front door and it stands out in your mind. So when somebody's calling one practice after another, after another, after another, and they have that one experience on the phone that sets it apart from everything else, you've differentiated yourself. So it doesn't have to be some big major thing. It can be something little. But that's what we're talking about here when we say what aspects of your clinical practice are going to differentiate you from your competition. What else clinically must you stop doing for this vision to come true? Again, if you're wanting to lean into more comprehensive or whole body health type dentistry, you might have to stop doing some procedures that in the past you've done. I have a practice that I work with, and she has stopped doing removable partials and dentures. She does a lot of implant cases. She does them really, really well, and she's building her practice on this more comprehensive dentistry. And so she has a prosthodontist that she refers to for removable, and she just doesn't do it in her practice anymore because she's trying to differentiate herself in that way. But it took some time to get there. What else clinically must you start doing for this vision to come true? So, these are those questions that really get us into thinking about the how and the action around the vision. And those first questions are more around the big dream itself. So, let's move into the financial side. So, when we're thinking about the financial key aspect of strategic vision planning, we're looking at the big vision. We're looking at how does the profitability of your practice feel? And we ask this question around feel on purpose because most of the time, as coaches, we will tell you to not think about your feelings as much as the data when we're talking about profitability. Am I right?
Oh yeah, nailed it.
But we do want to stop and say, do I feel secure? Do I feel safe in my practice? Do I feel like we are taking care of the team in the way that we want to be taking care of the team? Do I feel like I have the freedom that I really want in my practice financially? And just think through that a little bit. Does the return on that effort feel reasonable? Am I dragging at the end of the day? Do I feel exhausted and I look at what we produced and I'm shaking my head in disbelief because there's no way I'm this tired and we only got there? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What is that effort and energy that's going out into the practice and what are we getting back from it? And what do I want in the future if it's not what I have now? And to that caveat, little squirrel here, sometimes your vision isn't this complete 180 from where you are now. You might feel pretty good about your profitability. You might feel pretty good about the place that you're at. Almost so much so that it's easy and a little bit complacent and you have to challenge yourself a little bit to push when you're doing this vision planning. It's not always going from terrible to better. Sometimes we have really good practices who just want to be great, and this tool takes you there too. How will the overall profitability of your practice differ from today? And so we don't want to get really down into the minutia right here of we talked earlier, the 5% more, the 10% more. I want to make this much more. I want to be able to put that much more in my retirement. This is still the bigger dreaming. Then we're going to shift over into brainstorming around the strategic vision questions that get us into a little bit more of the action and the how. So, what's your vision for gross production? If you've watched any of our webinars or information around our gaps tool and our gap scorecard, we know that gross production is not the end all be all, but it is the starting point. So we have to start thinking about where do we want that gross production to be? Because the gross production is telling us what it's going to take in manpower and effort and operatories and facility and equipment to get it all done. How much of that do we want to be able to take home as income? It's really interesting when we sit down with clients and work through that gap scorecard to see a practice that can be gross producing 400, sometimes $500,000 in a month, multiple doctors, lots of team members. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, they're profiting sometimes hundreds of dollars for the practice, not thousands. And so you can look at that and say, what do I really want as take home? And what do I want my practice to be able to start accumulating and saving? What's your vision for your write offs? Do you sit down every single month and just dread having to look at what those adjustments look at? Do you want to be able to celebrate? Do you hear the stories of other practices who are going out of network and think like, is that possible for me? I would love to be at 6 or 10% write-offs. I'm at 43. How do I get there? Start thinking about what that would look like. What's your vision for your percentage on collections? I'm crushing it. I want to make sure we keep it that way. Or do we have some room to grow? What about overhead? What about your vision for the amount of loans that you will have? So loans are on that cash flow statement, everyone. If you're just looking at your P&L, that's not telling you this piece of the picture. And so when we pull out that cash flow statement and we're looking at our financing activity, what do we want that to look like differently than what it looks like now? Or are we looking really good? And I think I'm going to actually vision towards investing in my practice a little bit this year. And I might be accumulating some loans, but I want to be prepared for how to do that smart. What else do you need to start for this financial vision to come to fruition? What might you need to stop doing for this to come to fruition? Any thoughts on finances, Heather, before we move on to the next section?
Yes, I would even add like the financial vision questions that we talked about in the beginning. It's like, how do you feel now? How do you want to feel about it in the future? Like if you feel frustrated now, what is the feeling? What is that emotion that you want to feel if your vision were to come true? So that you also have a goal for your feelings. Because this is all like, yes, this is all of the nitty gritties and stuff, but I also want a goal in here for my vision is to feel this about my financial profitability, whereas right now or before I feel like or felt like this.
Yeah, when you just brought that up, it made me think about a team that I work with or actually worked with in the past. And one of their things is I want to be able to go on vacation and feel relaxed
Mhm.
because they've never been in a financial place with the practice where, yes, do they take vacation? Yes, not nearly as often as they want to because of where they are financially. But their vision there, where they really want to go with the feeling, is feeling so safe and secure in the financial stability of the practice that they know they can turn it off for a week, they can turn it off for 2 weeks, and they can actually sit on that vacation and relax, not sit there thinking like, this is going to cost us. We should really be in the office. You want to be able to enjoy that work life balance. And we'll get into a little bit more of that too when we talk about the key area of better practice, better life. But such a great point to bring up and remind us that it's so easy to get into the how right away. I think that's like a fault of most of our clients who work through this type of process is getting right down into the day to day because that's where we live majority of the time, so it's easier. It's a little bit harder to convince ourselves to just stop and sit up there and dream without starting to crush our own dreams. One of my clients, he'll tell you, he's like, I'm my own dream crusher. I dream and then I'm like, you can't do that. It's like the devil and the angel, right? Sitting on their shoulders every day.
Oh, that's hard.
All right. Well, this is one of yours and my favorite components, right? Is team culture. So let's talk a little bit about the key aspect around strategic vision that is team culture. I think that a lot of practices really want a lot for this area of their practice and sometimes don't know how to put it into words because so much around team culture is feel, it's vibe, it's energy, it's that tension in the air versus the lightness in the air. And it's hard to put words around that and put it down on paper. So some of these questions are really just meant to guide you through thinking big around some of the feelings around that. So, what's the overall vision for your team? And I think it's really easy to get into, well, I want two hygienists and two assistants and three front office team members. That's great. But let's think bigger and broader than that too around feelings. I want a team that is motivated. I want team members who are growth oriented. Let's think bigger and not about the team that's even sitting right in front of you, but just a team in concept in your ideal world 3, 5 years from now. What does that overall vision for your team look like? How healthy is your team culture now? And what do you want for it to be? Is it great and you want it to be better? Is it not great and you really know you have some work to do? What would consist of a great team culture for you? What would it have to feel like? What would it be like when you showed up for morning huddle if your team culture was exactly where you wanted it to be? Think about your team meetings. Think about when you're sitting next to a patient knee to knee with your assistant. What does it feel like in the room? And what specifically is happening to make it so? How can you help your team achieve their goals? We talk all the time about great leaders are always building other great leaders. And another concept that I shared in the Q4 TTT. I heard this not too long ago on a podcast with Andy Stanley, and he was talking about leaders either being inspiring leaders or inspirational leaders or authoritative leaders. And team members will do what you say and perform for you if you're either. But your authoritative leadership will not last, and an inspirational leadership will. It'll last well beyond if they even stay in your practice. They're going to go into their next role and into their next role, and they're coming back to you for mentorship. And they will always reflect back saying that person changed my life and had a big impact. And so start visioning around what type of leader do you want to be? And if you want to be the type of leader that's building other leaders and is an inspiration to your team and leads in that way, then you have to start thinking about how can I help my team to achieve their career goals? Hopefully here in my practice, but you never know. You never know. And you still want to support those people. What does that look like? What are your team's goals for their own family and work-life balance? I've actually talked to doctors who have team members who've been working with them for multiple years and they don't know that team member's children's name. Like you're working so close every single day and you don't even know their name. You have to connect. And so starting to think about what are your goals and what are your team's goals for work-life balance and what can we do in the practice to help support that? What are the team's financial goals? Do you know where your team members want to go financially? Are you currently not able to offer bonus, but you'd love to be able to create some type of profit sharing in the future? Do you want offer a 401k, but you're not matching it yet, and you want to be able to grow to where you can match it? Start thinking around the financial aspects that help to support your team as well. All right. So before I jump into the how, Heather, let me go backwards. Anything, because I know you love team culture. Tell me about like your thoughts on team culture in terms of how important it is for a dentist, a practice owner to really stop and think about team culture and how we're going to create something special.
Well, it's crazy important. And I have clients tell me all the time how important their team is to them. Here's the thing, dentistry, you cannot do it by yourself. You have to have a team around you to help you and support you. Like clinical dentistry is not possible. Maybe it is, but extremely difficult and hard. And I don't know of any dentist that wants to do it alone by themselves. So your team is crazy important. And I will ask my clients, how important is your team to you? And they're like, oh, it's way important. And then we ask the question our friend Rachel Wall has, what are you doing that supports what you just said? So all of these questions will help take that then, what are you doing to support what you just said? And I get, sometimes surface level answers from my clients. These questions, answering these questions, help you to dig a little bit deeper into those specifics.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll get, I want them to be happy. I want everybody to be happy here. Well, what would make them happy? And I bet you it's different for every person on your team to a degree. And so you can start to think about the next part of this, which is then how can I start to learn and know these things? And what would we need to do? Is my team bigger or smaller? If I am someone who decides in my vision that it's really going to be important to me to have a really strong, tight connection with all of my team members, you're going to have a harder time doing that if you have 30 team members or 40 team members than if you have six. It's just going to be logistically more challenging. So you have to look at what that vision is and then what are the strategies or the how around supporting that. What is the level of training on your team? What level of development is your team at? And they're probably at different levels. What does that look like? How do we migrate through that and make changes? Describing what you'd like your team culture to look like. This is when you can get more specific out of what it feels like. It feels happy to come to work. We laugh a lot, that type of thing, into like actual behavioral things that are showing up. People support one another. People jump in when someone else is running behind without having to be asked. Those type of tangible behavioral things are what you're looking for here. How's that different from today? Really reflect on what would have to start or stop happening in order for that vision to actually come true. Now, Sadly, sometimes this means there's the wrong person in a wrong seat. And maybe that person isn't going to be a part of our team 3 years from now or 5 years from now in this vision. Maybe they're the right person and they're just sitting in the wrong seat. And 3 years from now, they've moved seats and they're crushing it. And it's made a huge impact on the culture. Sometimes it's our own selves, the leaders and the dentists, who need to make some change in terms of how we engage with our team to impact culture. And so when you really stop and start looking at, what do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing? How is it different from today? We start getting a little more granular into the details of how we might be able to make this happen. All right, we're going to jump into the last key around strategic vision before we start to show you guys how some of this comes together in terms of annual planning. And then go ahead, and if you have questions, don't forget to add them to the Q&A or the chat, because at the end we'll take a few questions too. We'll take our pre-show to the post-show and we'll entertain you all some more. Okay, so when we're looking at better practice, better life vision, remember, when we're thinking the vision piece, it is the dream big piece. So what does your life outside of the practice look like? I hate to paint a picture of doom and gloom, but we do hear this. We do hear this. And you mentioned, Heather, going out into public forums and we see things posted and there's a lot of negativity, and it really breaks my heart. Like, breaks my heart into pieces when I see posts from dental professionals, especially dentists, if they're newer and they're like, what did I get myself into? I feel like I'm a slave to this job. I feel like there's so much weight on my shoulders as a dental practice owner that I don't know if I can bear it any longer. And I want to like find their phone number and pick up the phone and call them and say, like, there's hope. Don't do this. Because there is. And if you stop and you really think, like, what do I want life outside of my practice to look like? The goal of being an entrepreneur and of being a practice owner, Kirk and I love talking about this, is the freedom that you have to create the life that you want. And if you feel like you don't have enough of the life that you really want, you can change what's happening in your practice to make that happen. That's the beauty and the freedom of being an entrepreneur. So, what does your life outside of the practice look like in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now? If you have 2 year olds and 5 years from now, they're going to be seven, or, gosh, what about when they're in high school and they're playing sports or they're in theater and you want to be able to participate? You want to be able to coach, you want to be able to show up. What do you need to do? What is that going to look like? How does that feel? Maybe you don't have kids. You just want to travel. You're going to have plenty of money to do it. Trust me, from someone with 3 kids who, if I didn't have them, would have plenty of money to travel. Maybe you want to sit on the beach. Maybe you want to hike mountains. Whatever you want your life to look like, you have to get messy with it, brainstorm, jot it down, put it on paper. Otherwise, you're never going to get there. What do you like the days in your practice to look like? So we just talked about outside of your practice, but you have to have that balance, better practice, better life. How do you want your days in your practice to look and feel? How fast do you want to work? When do you want to leave the office every day? We love talking about that 7 to 3 schedule. Heather, you've had practices. I mean, I've had practices that change your hours. You've had practices that change their hours. Tell us a little bit about experience around clients changing their hours. I know I'll start by saying it always starts with, I don't know if we can do that. We have those really loyal 4 o'clockers that are not going to want to end their day any sooner. So tell me about some clients that you've worked with that have transitioned their hours, leaving a time that suits their outside life a little bit better, and what it looks like.
It's like you were mentioning with that client before, like, this is what I want, but like, can I do that? That devil and angel thing, that
Yeah.
it's absolutely possible. And it doesn't have to be that 7 to 3 exactly like that. We have a lot of clients that do a modified version. They'll do 7:30 to 3:30, or they'll do 8 to 4, depending on, and they're so mindful of their team when they really care about their team. So-and-so has to drop off their kids. So we're starting at 8 so that we could do morning huddle at 7:40, and they'll be there by that time. That kind of thing, that's totally okay. You find your version of what works for you. Like you said, the beauty of being an entrepreneur. But I will tell you what, I have never had a client say that was the worst thing we ever did. We're going back to our old schedule. Nobody's ever said that. And once they do, it's a game changer. And oftentimes it's a unique employment proposition that
Mhm.
other people want to come work for you because of the schedule that you have. And who doesn't want to like leave at 3:15? Um, It's great. I have a client, they actually do a modified version. They're 8 to 4. But when I have gone and observed in their practice, it's literally crickets, like a ghost town at 4:12, 4:13. They end seeing patients at 4. All the lights are off and everyone's gone by 5:12, 5, or sorry, 4:12, 4:13. It's crazy.
I love that. I worked in a practice one time that did 7 to 3 every day but one day, and it was 11 to 7. And it was Wednesday, and it was terrible because we would leave at like 7:30, and then you get back at 6:40 the next morning for your 7 a.m. start. And I'm like, I need a Murphy bed in my operatory. Like, why did I even drive home for 20 minutes and back? And I remember years of the team saying, like, a lot of us had young kids, we missed bedtime. I mean, sometimes it wasn't bad because we would all go out together and have a drink instead of going home because the kids were already in bed. It was kind of nice, but for the most part, we wanted to be at home with our families. And so it was that same conversation of, but we have all these patients that come at 5 and 6 o'clock. What are we going to do? They're going to complain. It's going to be an uprising. And in the end, we said, we're doing it. The team matters more than, what's happening with those. Really, like, add that up, right? One day a week, two patients over the course of how it's not that many people. And we made the change, and guess what? They started coming at 7 o'clock before work. And it was really not that big of a deal. You have one or two stinkers that like to say something, and then they move on and they just schedule at 7 a.m. And you never look back. And I'll never, ever forget the feeling of getting home, especially when it wasn't dead of winter. And it's, 4:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You feel like you have a whole day left. In the summer, when the sun's up till 10 and you got home at 4, it's a complete life changer for the team and for you, the practice owner, to not feel like you're there till 7, 8 o'clock after hours every single day. So we went on a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it's a really good one because being in control of what time you leave the practice, what time your team leaves the practice, and what that allows for outside of your practice life is huge. We talked earlier about the what do you want to be known for clinically by your patients, but also just what does it feel like? And what do you want to be known for by your spouse, your children, your friends? I worked with a dentist whose son had filled out they do that in like kindergarten and stuff. They do the like, my mommy does this, my daddy does that. And it's like, where does your daddy live? At his office? Like, that's so sad. Nobody wants that for themselves. So, what do you want to be known for by your spouse and your children and your friends? And then, what does your retirement timeline look like? What are going to be the needs that you have financially? Again, we're talking better practice, better life. The goal of this practice is to create this experience that allows you to have a financial prosperity, to live a nice life, but also to be able to retire from it one day and go and experience retirement in whatever way that you so choose. And you need to be thinking about that all the way from the beginning to make sure that you're setting course on the right path. So, things to think about in terms of action and how. How many days will you need to work per month, per week? What do you guys? We have a doctor in our community who she's working 3 days a week now, and she's so happy. 3 days a week, short days, living her best life, out of network. You can do it. It doesn't happen overnight. What hours are you working every day? What do you need to stop in order to bring this vision to life? What do you need to start? You're going to start seeing a trend there in every area. We start thinking, what do we need to stop? What do we need to start? So that's the big thinking stage, right? When we go through that strategic vision tool, which is what we just walked you through, you literally need to set aside time. You're going to have to carve out time. Start with 30 minutes, start with an hour, whatever you can carve out where you're just undisturbed and you can sit down with your thoughts and you can really think things out. If I'm honest, you're probably going to need a lot more time than that to do each and every section. You might need an hour per section. It depends on how big you think and how big you dream. And then once you get through the dreaming, you can get from thinking into planning. And so we're not going to spend a ton of time on this as we're getting closer to the end here, but we just want you to see how the elevation changes through this process. When we're way up high in vision and strategic vision, we're at a higher elevation, bigger thinking. We're going to break it down even further into annual outcomes. So when we're thinking strategic vision, we're thinking 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, retirement. And then we're going to bring it down a little bit and we're going to talk about annual outcomes. What do we want to feel different next year? At the end of next year, I really want to be able to feel like this. I want more of this. I want less of that. And then we take it down another notch in elevation and we talk about annual goals. By the end of 2025, what do you want to have done in order to meet that annual outcome? And then from there, the elevation drops even further into more of your day to day, where we're building out quarterly priorities that support those annual goals, and then a weekly focus at our team meetings that supports those quarterly priorities. So, all year long, we're feeding that greater, grander strategic vision week over week as we're meeting the needs of our quarterly priorities. And our quarterly priorities are feeding in to what those annual goals are for our practice and for our life. Those annual goals are then going to help us get that result of the bigger outcome that we really want out of this next coming year. And that year and that outcome is going to feed into and support our much bigger, grander long term vision for our practice and our life. So, as we move into that, Heather, you and I both have some examples here of some teams that have worked through this process of thinking vision and then getting down into that more granular elevation around outcomes and goals. And so, when we talk about outcomes and goals, it really, like I said, feeds that strategic vision. So these are not tool specific. This is a table that I just made in Google Drive with one of my teams to help us organize some of the things that they really wanted to focus on. So successful outcomes, and you can see we color coded it here. But the outcome is big and broad, and it's not super specific. And so, in one example here is optimizing alignment and communication of team leaders. So again, there's nothing specific, there's nothing measurable. It's just an outcome. By the end of next year, we really want to optimize alignment and communication of our team and our leaders. And then they created some individual goals for the year to help with that. So I like to read them with by the end of, because it helps keep it annual. By the end of the year, we want to cross train the front office team for flexibility and patient satisfaction. By the end of the year, we want to implement and consistently use a face or function and accountability chart. And by the end of the year, we want to consistently integrate alignment meetings into our communication rhythm. And you can see here, I won't go into every one, but another outcome they had was around the team culture piece, fostering a joyful and creative workplace. Again, that's kind of big and broad. That's feelings based because it's an outcome, but you can get more specific when you're looking at goals. By the end of the year, we're going to have held 2 fun team events successfully. By the end of the year, we're going to re envision our core values celebration process. And by the end of the year, our block scheduling will be determined to improve the schedule flow because the schedule was really negatively impacting the team culture as well. Everybody felt kind of icky every day. Let's look at another example. So in this example, there was 3 outcomes. So we'll just look at outcome number 2 as an example. This is a clinical side, right? This probably came from the clinical strategic vision questions. Patients will receive convenient in house implant care using guided surgeries to keep more cases in the practice, allowing the doctor to focus more on the dentistry he loves while providing a smoother, more personalized experience for patients. So, this is an outcome. This is just like a big concept. We want to do more implants for multiple reasons. I love doing them as the doctor, they bring me joy. And I want to make sure that there's this continuous experience for my patients, not the back and forth of referring to a specialist. And so, some goals around that. By the end of 2025, we'll identify and enroll a guided implant surgery training program for the doctor and team members that are directly involved. By the end of 2025, we'll acquire and implement guided surgery technology and tools, ensuring that the team is trained and proficient in their use. Now, as you can imagine, that's going to be broken up into 4 quarters throughout the year. You're not going to do all of that in January and February just because we're gung ho because we just finished our strategic planning. So, the nice thing about this is these are annual and then they can be broken up into your 4 quarters. There's 13 weeks in every quarter. So, there's a lot of time to be able to turn these in to more bite sized, manageable, accomplishable tasks. Do you want to share this one, Heather?
Sure. So in this table, your table is awesome, Miranda, because it's just right straight across. But the top there is successful outcomes. Number one, systems driven over people dependent. This is actually a big one that a lot of our clients come to us for. The 1 year goal is associated with that bigger feeling outcome because, Susie at the front, she knows everything. And if she left, I would feel like the sky is falling. So, in order to make sure that if something were to happen to Susie and feel like that would be a stable environment, the goals are to automate the task to increase efficiency, like continuing care, unscheduled treatment, correct patient count, review the patient identification and where that information lives, optimize dental intelligence, the features and the offerings there. So if there were an admin team member we were worried about, who knows? Any team member, really, this one just happens to be admin focused. That financial stability and awareness that came up in what we were talking about before as well, with that financial vision to work through ACT Dental's PPO roadmap to revise their membership plan, reduce the practice effort gap. We've mentioned before the gap scorecard that we provide to our clients, fill out the gaps goal setter both year and dream columns, and then modify hygiene block scheduling to spread the delta perio appointments. So again, like just some very specific things that we're not going to accomplish January, February, but over the course of the year, if we are able to accomplish these things, then that outcome is going to feel so much different.
Yeah, love it. All right, we have one more of yours here. Oh, it's financial stability again. That's common, is it not?
It is very, very common. Yes. Actually, you have another one. Go to the next one. You have another one. Yeah. This one I like a lot because the top one there, the office works like a well-oiled machine. Do you ever feel like there's snags? There's snags throughout your day that just like, that felt really disconnected and disjointed. You feel that. The patient's going to feel that. So this client specifically said, of our goals, we're going to review and revise every handoff, every touch point when I pass a patient off to another clinical or admin team member. This is what that's going to look like. They're going to make sure their checklists are also linked to their function accountability chart and review those as well. And then assign all of the systems and those job descriptions and the checklist in there so that everyone is super crystal clear on what it is that they own and what they are responsible for to impact feeling like it's a well-oiled machine.
Love it. And before we jump to Q&A, because we're getting really close, I'd love for you to talk about the differentiation one because we did mention that earlier too.
You're right, we did. So this practice, they really want to differentiate themselves as comprehensive. That did come up in our strategic vision examples before. So down there at the bottom of the graphic that you see, the threes associated with that differentiation piece. So they want to prioritize, document, and implant dentistry systems, the verbiage, forms, and financial policies, as well as any periodontal related systems. This client happens to be in a rural area where a lot of their patients or potential patients may not know that they provide those specific pieces of dentistry. So completing the differentiation tool will also help them to identify those. They already have a couple identified, but to complete it all the way and finalize it so that they're super clear and confident on it so that they can verbalize that to patients and in their marketing efforts.
I love it. And I imagine that you guys can tell that what we're doing is I picture, I'm old. I picture the Price is Right and the little game show where the little like yodeler guy is like climbing the mountain, right? Because as you do these things, every single goal that you put in place that you then break down into each quarter, that then you break down into your weekly tasks and action items and development time, it's you just getting a little further along towards that greater elevation of your strategic vision. You're making little action, which you see here. That's the next step in all of this is you think about it, you dream about it, you set a plan in place and you get it a little more granular into those annual outcomes and goals. And then you start acting on it week over week, quarter over quarter until you can really start to feel your vision come to life. You start to get there. And so before we get into the Q&A, this has been so good. So we did a good time too, because you and I could take 3 hours. You're like Kirk and I. It's like
Good. I'm really proud of us.
if it was you, Kirk, and me, we'd be in big trouble.
Oh, yes.
Um, so some final thoughts. So you might be thinking, I don't have time for this. You just told me I have to sit down for an hour just to think about one segment of this tool. I would just challenge you that you don't have time not to, because every day that goes by that you have not created a vision for yourself and your practice and your life is one more day of struggle, one more day that takes you in, you're going in a direction. You're just going in the direction that you happen upon versus being intentional about it. Realizing your vision and knowing where you want to go is going to save you endless hours of wasted time in the future. And you really need to get clear on what your vision is and then align with your team around it. And alignment doesn't mean agreement. They don't have to agree with the vision, but everyone has to know what that vision is, why, what the purpose is behind it all, how it ties into your core purpose and your core values. And once that whole team is aligned with you, you can set course and everyone will have that experience of meaningful work and knowing where we're going and how we want to get there. Any final thoughts from you, Heather? And then we'll see if anybody has any questions.
I just love the Benjamin Franklin quote, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. I know that all of you want to succeed in this industry that is dentistry. This is how you can get there. This is how you can succeed more than you did yesterday. Is just by sitting down and walking through this. So keep that in mind. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's
Love it.
important that you do.
Awesome. And if you want to talk with other people who are experiencing the same thing you are, we have the QR code there again, because this is the conclusion of the CE portion. You can join the BPA and that conversation can go on there. And we also would love to help you. If you feel like I can't do this by myself, or hey, send me that tool and then you get stuck, that's what coaches are for. We love helping to see our clients reach their goals and feel the vision that they're seeking out. Like, it brings us so much joy. We love being helpful. So if you want help, a coach can help you too. And so I'm going to go ahead and pop off the slideshow and stop sharing, just so that if there's any questions, we can answer them. I do see, by the way, that you put the CE in the chat. So I should say that out loud. The CE start and end codes and the link are in the chat. So take a look at that if you have not already. And then anybody have any questions? Did anything pop in?
No questions that I could see. Oh, we do have a new one. Can I have more information on practice coaching for more help with information given today? We would love to help you with that. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I'll put an email in the chat. Gina at actdental.com is who you would want to talk to. And she can definitely help explain what the coaching process looks like. Again, how to do it on your own, how to do it with a group, or how to do it with a coach. If you want to hang out with somebody like Heather and I periodically and help hold you accountable, we got you.
Here's the thing, like, it's just so good to have someone to bounce ideas off of. The examples that you guys thought didn't happen just client. I mean, just listening to the clients going, okay, now I see exactly what it is that you're saying, having that outside view in and that outside perspective, then we can go and say, I believe this is what you're trying to say. Is this the goal? Like, in this statement, is that what it is that you're thinking? So we can help you get your thoughts in your brain out onto documented paper so that it can be effectively shared with the team. Because none of us are mind readers. And oftentimes we get frustrated with our team because we're like, they're just not doing what I want them to do. And they can't get there unless you share it with them. And sometimes it's really hard to verbalize and get that out. And a coach can really help with that.
Yeah, some people are much better at communicating big ideas like vision, and other people really struggle. They know, but they don't know how to put words to it or how to create that alignment. And that's
Yep.
where we can really step in and help. And when we talk about this a lot, and we're actually going to be doing E-Myth as our book of the quarter in Q1, because we've talked so much lately about the three circles and the concept of being a dentist, being a practice owner, and you're the entrepreneur, you're the leader, and you're the clinician. And that's really all happening at the same time. Although you spend probably 90% of your time, if not a little bit more, as the clinician. And so it's really hard to carve that time or to be able to stop your clinical brain and go over here and be the entrepreneur for a few minutes. It is challenging. And so we're able to then help you and guide you through how to think like an entrepreneur and shift gears from your clinician mind and step into that entrepreneur, creating the freedom that you want in the practice that you have. So this has
Yeah.
been awesome, Heather.
It really has. If I know that Kirk and I did a podcast just recently on those three circles, but I don't think it's dropped yet.
Okay.
So be on the lookout, you guys, like subscribe to our podcast and make sure that you are aware of when that does drop. I can't remember the title right now. But we do dive deeper into what those three circles mean.
Cool. Oh, and I see another question came in. It says, if you have a limited CE budget as a new owner dentist, would you prioritize learning more clinical dentistry or business of dentistry?
Mm.
You just did this and I did this little finger tap like, oh, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first? We might have the same opinion. We might have different opinions.
You have a limited CE budget as a new owner dentist. Would you prioritize learning more clinical or the business of dentistry? Go ahead, Miranda.
So you said new owner dentist. You didn't necessarily say new dentist. So to some degree, I feel like there's a little bit of a difference there. If you're a new dentist and a new owner dentist, it might be a slightly different answer, but I'm going to answer as it's worded, which is new owner dentist. If you're a new owner dentist, I would encourage you to really dig into running your business and understanding the financial aspects of your business, the profitability behind your business, the KPIs, the systems, what you really need. And I would also argue that there's a lot of opportunity for pretty minimal investment to be able to learn those things. You can learn a ton in our BPA and it's like $99 a month. It's not that great of an investment. But what I will say is the value is huge to be able to feel comfortable knowing how a business runs. I would say you're not, from my understanding, taught a lot of that as a dentist in dental school. And when you go out and become a dentist owner and a practice owner, if you're 3-4 years in and now you're solely reliant on, as you mentioned earlier, Heather, Susie or Judy or John or the people that are helping to run your practice, how do you even know if they're doing a good job? How do you know if you're being taken advantage of? How do you know if you're meeting or exceeding what you could? Maybe they're doing a great job, but it's just is all that they know. And what we see most often is around the bottom line and that true profitability and not really fully understanding what all of the numbers mean when it comes down to our profit and loss statements and our cash flow statements. So if you are the person who asked this question new, I would say look for anything that we've done as an ACT team on the gaps concept because it's going to really help you to understand the business behind your business and the numbers and how to be profitable. And if you can do that from the beginning, you're going to have more to be able to financially invest in your clinical learning later.
I agree with you. With that limited CE budget, I just think exactly like BPA, 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 because there's so much back there. And then you can just set a plan for yourself to once a week, I'm going to go in and I'm going to really digest and learn about one specific subject that piqued my interest. Or we had a problem this week in the practice, so I'm going to search in the BPA for that specific thing and then really get good at that. There were 4 keys that we showed: clinical, financial, better practice, better life, and then team culture. The clinical piece is just one. With a limited CE budget, you can't really like invest in yet Pinky, Spear, Dawson, like the big ones that are going to make a big impact on the practice. So I would say start with the BPA, start there and go into like, what's our biggest issue or struggle right now as a practice? Search that in the BPA and start there. Because with limited CE, you can do so much. Like, I'm sorry, limited budget.
Yeah.
We have like unlimited CE and ACT. So with your limited budget, that's like perfect marriage.
Well, I'm glad you just mentioned that too around Pankey Spear, Dawson, Coyce. They're amazing. And I've worked with doctors trained in them and I have learned an immense amount as a clinical hygienist working alongside doctors with that education. And we actually just had that pop up in the BPA, I think last week. A dentist asked that question of, is it worth the investment and time and money? And we had some great responses from a lot of the dentists in our community. One client that was yours, one client that was mine, along with some others who have invested in that clinical dentistry. And I think they made a great point of before you invest in that, you have to know why you're doing it and how it's going to affect your practice. And so to me, the foundation is, again, the vision of what do I want for my business? What do I want for my practice? Because otherwise, how do you choose what CE path to go down clinically and how it fits with what you want your practice to be? So, yeah. All right,
Yeah.
cool. So join the BPA. Moral
Join the
of the story.
BPA. Like, how many times do we have to say join the BPA, join the BPA,
I
join the
love it. Well,
BPA?
this has been awesome. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for everybody for being Heather. Thanks for last minute jumping in and hanging out with me. This has been great. I
It's
don't
so
see you
fun.
enough,
Thank you for
friend.
having me. I really like it's a pleasure to be here with you, Miranda. You just killed it. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks to everybody else too. And until we see you next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.